Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It is Wednesday, 25th, 2024, the year of new beginnings, and I am here with Anxiety, a Poisonous Pendulum. This is my Wednesday afternoon class. For those of you who are interested, I decided to go ahead and bring it live to you today. And also as a fundraiser, for those of you who would like to donate to my channel and to the work, my life's work that I'm doing, I welcome you. Description box shares everything you need to know. But I thought I'd come live today on our channel and share this powerful teaching that will literally change your life. If anxiety is something that you wrestle with, I encourage you to take this course in this class. Every week I will teach a specific area of anxiety. But today I'm bringing you the foundation of this teaching, which was actually a revelation that I received back in 2020, I believe it was. I was kind of going through this process of really getting to the roots of my anxiety. Anxiety is something that I have wrestled with for most of my life, much of which has come from post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma. So if you are someone who wrestles with any of those things, anxiety is likely an unwelcome guest and one that plagues you every day. So today we're going to break free, we're going to learn some new things, or perhaps be reminded of some things that we already know. And hopefully I will give you some tools to equip you to combat and to conquer your anxiety. Okay, so let's get started. So anxiety, this definition and this connection was a revelation that I was given. So I'm going to teach from this perspective. It certainly has helped me understand where I tend to lean. I've taught this before. Those of you that have been rocking with me for a while, you already know this. But for those of you that are new, this is going to be probably a new thing you've heard. So anxiety is the pendulum that takes you to the heights of anger or the depths of depression. And the reason that there is this contrast is because some of us tend to lean more heavily in one direction or another. So what this means is that when you are attacked by anxiety, this is actually a very key and pivotal and powerful and significant word to remember: attacked. Anxiety attacks us. When you are attacked by anxiety, you will tend to go in one of two directions. You will either go toward anger and project your anxiety outward, or you will go internalize your anxiety, which will lead to states of sadness. And depression is one of those states. So there are states of each, anger and sadness. And again, this is all connected to your temperament, your personality, perhaps anxiety or anxious attachment style, what that is. But basically, we all have a default mode that we go to. I tend to internalize anxiety for the most part, but I do vacillate between the two at times. And yes, you might be somebody who's kind of in the middle, and sometimes you project it outward. That is to say that you, in your attempt to bring peace back into your self and in your surroundings, you try to control your environment and you try to control the people around you. So you might be someone who's actually very curt or rude to others when you get anxious. You take it out on people, you project it outward. Others of us, again, we internalize anxiety. So chances are we might just go quiet, go silent, and not want to talk, isolate ourselves to escape the uncomfortable feeling of anxiety, or it is that's stressing us out, or whatever it is that we're going through. So this is important for you to know where you tend to lean, because that's your starting point in conquering this affliction. Okay, again, apologies for interruptions with messages or phone calls, but I do have my phone. Let's see. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, another thing is internet interruptions. I apologize, but I think what happens is it'll just bring me back to where we were, so we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to share this verse. It's a very powerful verse, actually, and it really helps to understand the remedy for anxiety, spiritually speaking. And this is the verse from Proverbs 12:25. Anxiety in a man's heart. By the way, that's not a sexist thing. Man meaning humanity. Okay, so women and men, this is for us. Anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word cheers him up. So I pray this is a good word for you to help you in your anxiety. But the remedy to anxiety is to speak to your anxiety. Okay? Again, if you're someone who projects, then maybe you need to hear someone help you calm down. And if you're someone who internalizes, then maybe you need to hear someone say, do you want to share what's going on? Or, encouraging you to open up. Okay, so let's see. Earlier I mentioned how anxiety attacks, okay? This is pivotal and foundational information, because when we think about the physical manifestations of anxiety, a lot of them tend to be heart related. Now, you can have stomach issues physically when you have anxiety. You can have migraines or chronic headaches when you have anxiety. It really depends, I think, on obviously DNA or genetic related diseases. But usually they are connected to, hi everyone, welcome in the chat. They are connected to heart attacks, okay, or panic attacks. Those of you that have panic attacks, you know how awful they can be. And they tend to attack the heart. And we're going to get into why. This is actually very powerful, but it is the heart that is, as I've shared many, many times, and I will share many, many more times, the heart is the central nervous system of self. The heart is where we process the issues of life. The heart is where we really make sense of everything, and really not sense, but we really bring to our life the foundation of our belief system. So when we are attacked with anxiety, it's important to know what usually happens to you physically, if you are, especially if you are someone who chronically suffers, because it is a domino effect. It doesn't just affect your mind, although it can. It doesn't just affect your heart, although it definitely attacks the heart, but it does move into the physical realm of self. So likely, there may actually be times when you're not even tuned into the fact that you're struggling with anxiety. You just have physical symptoms, and you go to the doctor and they tell you, okay, you know, chronic headaches or migraines, and take this medication, and it doesn't seem to go away. You might be somewhere where you need to dig deeper to get to the root of those physical issues and those symptoms. Okay, let's see. Moving on. And here's a verse from Proverbs 2. It's Proverbs 4:23. Out of the heart flow the issues of life. So one thing to note for yourself is, when you're coming to this place of trying to battle your anxiety, it's important to know where you are. What are the issues of life that you're battling, that you're dealing with? Some of them can be circumstantial and temporary. So let's say, as in my case right now, we are in flux, and so there's been a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of instability. So this causes, obviously, a state of fight or flight, which is unsettling to the mind. It's definitely unsettling to the heart, and it's absolutely unsettling to the body. So, but once your temporary situation improves, then your anxiety and your symptoms should improve. However, if you are someone who has chronic or even acute anxiety, that is to say it's been prolonged into an actual condition or disorder, because your anxiety was not managed, it wasn't addressed in those temporary states, it actually became a chronic part of your being, then chances are you may have a longer journey to unravel it, but you can still find ways to manage and find ways to combat it, and definitely find ways to conquer it. And so that's what I'm hoping to equip you with. So let's get into this. Anxiety comes from, this is the foundation to your understanding of where this comes from. Okay? Anxiety comes from the spirit of fear. Okay? So again, just as we are 3 in 1, we are spirit, soul, and body. Our anxiety, which wrestles and attacks us in the soul realm and in the physical realm, actually has a root in the spiritual realm. And this is the spirit of fear. Fear is a spirit that comes from the enemy to come and wreak havoc in our lives. So again, this foundational knowledge helps you combat even spiritually, and really you need to understand that foundation first so you can get a hold of it in your soul realm. So I'll share a little testimony right now so I can give you a little foundation to work with and kind of a story to understand a little bit better to relate to your story. So I grew up with a spirit of fear. This has nothing to do with the fact that I'm born on Halloween, although that might have something to do with it. I don't know. But I will say that fear chased me from the very, very early years of my life. In fact, I didn't even realize how enslaved I was to fear until I began to address some root issues of trauma in my life. And this is the catalyst, this is the key, is understanding those roots in your life so that you can regain your entire being, your soul, and your body. Because again, for some of us that have been in this chronic state, it attacks us physically, and it is very, very painful and sometimes debilitating. So this spirit of fear, in my case, did come from trauma, unbeknownst to me. In fact, I would have a lot of panic attacks. I would have a lot of heart palpitations, and actually to this day, I still wrestle with those, especially when I'm in those chronic states of unrest, which right now is one of those. But by the grace of God and the fact that I've been given this revelation and knowledge, even as I'm teaching, I'm reminding myself how to overcome. So the root is fear. Now, when I came to understand the spiritual root of fear, I had to know the connection that it had to my inner being. And again, my connection was a specific trauma that happened to me that was unresolved. It wasn't addressed, but once I started to resolve it and address it, I started gaining victory over not only mentally, but emotionally and physically. So now, many years later, when I'm triggered, because you'll still be triggered, because this side of eternity, we're going to deal with problems. This is part of the human experience, okay? But when I'm triggered and when you're triggered, it's easier to identify, okay, this just happened. This triggered this response in me, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical. And therefore, I need to take action to help me get back into homeostasis or baseline level of calm and peace. So, the coming from the spirit of fear throws us off balance from the harmony of spirit, soul, and body. Again, so it causes chaos within self, which then causes chaos with everything else around you. It's a really strange and uncomfortable space. By the way, if you have any questions, I will be checking them and I will be responding, but do forgive if it's a little time while I'm teaching and I'm not seeing them. Let's see. And anxiety attacks the heart, as I mentioned earlier. Now the heart, just as the mind, I just taught on this not that long ago, and I teach it all the time. But the heart has 3 and actually 4 interconnections within self. So my heart is connected to my spirit realm. So it's my emotional spiritual connection. My heart is connected to my mental realm, so that's my emotional mental realm. So that's to say how my mind affects my heart, how my thoughts affects my emotions. And then the heart is connected to the physical realm, so that's my literal heart. And we have, again, manifestations of this anxiety whenever we are in these fight or flight places of unrest or chronic stages of constant anxiety. Anxiety manifests, as I said, in our physical bodies, causing unrest and dysfunction in homeostasis. So homeostasis is literally the baseline that of optimum health that you should be at. That it's as time continues, it gets harder and harder to be in this space, which is why we need to fight for it even more. But homeostasis is the place of complete harmony and complete balance, spirit, soul, and body. And the central nervous system. Examples of this are, like I said, panic attacks, and all the physical issues. So headaches, stomach issues. You know, if you have IBS or you have even, I would say, some autoimmune diseases, Crohn's disease, fibromyalgia. That's something that I've wrestled with for many years. Chronic fatigue syndrome. All of these autoimmune are, if not directly affected by, they are definitely influenced by anxiety. Vertigo, as I said, heart palpitations, fatigue, and the list goes on and on. So again, if you have physical issues, I encourage you to go backwards and go deeper into the soul realm to see what kind of places and spaces within yourself that you're still unhealed, or you're in the throes of something, and it will naturally come back to that place of harmony and peace slowly. For some of us, it might take longer, like I said, especially if you are someone who's been in this state for a long time. It's almost like your body is used to being in fight or flight. And it's very interesting. I have seen and I have experienced within myself massive changes and fluctuations in my health when it comes to being in these chronic states versus having those respites of stability. Okay, Hi, welcome everyone. Good to see y'all. Let's see. Anxiety is a perpetuating state of unrest and unease that if left, by the way, I'm just reading from all my notes from my core teaching, but I don't want to miss anything because this, for some of you, this is the first time that you're getting this teaching and I want you to have all of it. If left untreated, will cause serious complications and disrupt our life. This is so true. I have been on this end of the spectrum, and honestly, with the recent kind of instability, it has triggered a lot of my physical symptoms, and it has definitely triggered a lot of my emotional system. Now, again, this is going back to understanding how you relate to anxiety and how you're affected by anxiety. And also how you are dealing with your own unhealed self. Okay, so a lot of times when we're triggered, it's going to open up some places of self that are still unhealed. Okay, so even if this anxiety, let's say again in my situation, this is sort of a temporary and yet at the same time kind of chronic outside environment and influence that is causing this unrest. Your dad's calling you, babe. Sorry. So you need to remember that, and as long as I'm in this state, I'm going to be affected by the anxiety that's coming against me. So therefore, I need to be prepared in my my methods of how to combat it and how to conquer it. So if I am, again, if I'm someone who internalizes anxiety, then I need to be extra cautious to remember that I tend to get depressed if I'm anxious. So I want to set up those preventive measures to help me combat the depression. Okay, now this is actually if you're really self-aware and you already know this about yourself. If you're not, then you might not even know how to handle it. So this is, again, this is what I'm teaching you. But yeah, it's important to have those in place, and I'll get to that in a minute, some of the remedies that we can turn to when it comes to combating it. So let's see. If anybody has any questions, feel free to hop in the chat room and ask. I'm here to answer any questions and to kind of encourage you in it. Let's go ahead and go into these different ways that we can combat anxiety. Okay. The first one, we must acknowledge that anxiety is rooted in fear. As we established earlier, there is a spiritual root to your fear. Okay. I'll go ahead and go back to an example again, another example, just a generic one, but perhaps one that resonates. Let's say when you were a kid, somebody close to you scared you with clowns. Somebody close to you scared you with clowns when you were a kid. Okay, so you now have this fear of clowns. So whenever you see a clown, you are triggered by the image of it. Now, whether it's in a scary movie or whether it's sitting in a store. There's something about it that triggers your root of anxiety. So in order for you to come to the place where, in order for you to come to that place of conquering it, you must face the root of it, okay? This is the whole phrase, facing your fears. It's very important to get to a place where you can. Because once you can, then you gain victory over the oppression of the attack itself. Let's see. It is rooted in fear, and it is a gauge to our present spirit, mental, and emotional state. Okay. So again, if you're still scared of clowns at 30 years old, you got to get to that root of why. What happened to you, and especially in childhood, as I've taught before, there is a space where our memories aren't even really accessible to us because of the fact that we experience something so young that it is actually trapped in the limbic system and can only be accessed by accessing the limbic system. This is why I use art, music, and movement with my therapy sessions, because that is the place of the mind and the brain that is activated and can get to those deep roots that even talk therapy can't access. That's just a little side note for you. Number 2, we must know which direction anxiety tends to take us. Again, so I just taught on this. Either you tend to go to the heights of anger, and the pendulum reflecting the height of anger, because anger tends to be loud, it tends to be big, and it tends to be outward, okay? Or the depths of depression, again, because it's internalized. It is quiet sometimes it's not. Sometimes depression is not quiet. Sometimes it comes out in crying spells, or hypervigilance, or you're just, especially if you're in an acute or chronic stage of anxiety, any little thing can trigger you and upset you, even if in a normal situation it would be like, what's the big deal? I just, But if you're in hypervigilance, every little thing can set you off, and it can either make you upset if you project it, or internalize and turn into sadness, depression. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and share these states so you understand. Anxiety causes, again, it manifests in anger. Anger left unchecked will go into a space of resentment. Okay, so if you're the type that you're resentful, it's because you have hidden anger that you haven't addressed. Now, the next stage after resentment is bitterness. Okay, bitterness is a space where you have buried your resentments and you are now bitter. Okay, and if you don't deal with that bitterness, it turns into apathy. And apathy is literally the worst stage you can be, because you have no heart. You are cold toward people. You don't really care about people. It's a very dark space to be. So if you're wrestling with any of those, the key is to move backwards into anger, which is actually a raw emotion. Anger in and of itself is not necessarily a bad emotion. It is a natural raw emotion, but it is when we don't have a hold over it, we don't have control over it, that it turns into toxicity to self and to others. And obviously to self, it would manifest in those different stages of resentment, bitterness, or apathy. Or if it's toxic to others, then you actually take your anger out on other people, verbally abusive and even physically abusive, which is awful. And with the depressive states, the first raw emotion is sadness. Again, in and of itself, sadness is not bad or toxic. It is a natural raw emotion. But sadness left unchecked will turn into depression. And depression left unchecked turns into disappointment and discouragement and, a kind of a darker stage and state of sadness. And the worst stage you can be is despondency, which is completely shut off and have no desire to even share anything about yourself with others. Hi everyone, welcome. So anyone have any questions, please feel free to ask as we're continuing. Let's see, number 3, we must know the roots of our brokenness. Okay, so this is what I teach on the inner healing journey. We all have brokenness in our life. We are broken people who were raised by broken people who were raised by broken people, and so on and so on. The hope is to get to the point of acknowledging this so that I can heal enough to pass down more healing to the next generations. But I cannot do that without having that self-awareness and that courage to deal with my issues. Okay. Much of the time, anxiety is something we've carried, as I mentioned earlier, for much longer than we realize. And I've already kind of gone into that, so I'm going to skip that over. Yes, again, so the inner healing journey is really, we're naturally in this journey if we are aware enough to realize it. Everything you struggle with has a root and has a way of escape. It has a remedy. And the more in tune you are with it, the more you can actually see the light that you need to see. So yes, the inner healing journey, again, one-to-one sessions, anyone interested in help and rescue and needing someone to walk alongside you and kind of help you see those areas in your life, I'm available. Actually, my availability is quite open right now. So you can either click on my website link and book a session, or you can reach me at shesrestored@gmail.com. And I would be very, very honored to help you on that journey. Number 4, we must address our anxious coping and coping mechanisms, and again, default mode, all of these things within self, and learn how to adjust them in a healthy way. Okay, so all of us have either experienced or are in the throes of unhealthy ways to manage our anxiety. Okay, and these can come in all kinds of ways. So whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, we have learned, again, because of the trauma that we experienced growing up, or the trauma that we experienced in our adult life, or those places within self that are still unhealed, that are in a sense, the places of self that are unhealed are literally time capsuled to when they happen to you. And the only way to bring them to the present, because this is what you're trying to do when you're trying to, you know, become the better self, you want to bring yourself into wholeness. And it's very hard to live in the present when part of you is still in the past, or part of you is broken still, whether it's mental brokenness, emotional brokenness, or physical brokenness. So it's very important to know how you handle your anxiety the unhealthy way, so that you can learn to move into healthier ways to handle your anxiety. Let's see. These coping mechanisms that we learned, especially because of, for those of us that went through childhood trauma, that know about it, because some of us went through it and we didn't even realize that we went through it, but some of us do have memories of what happened to us. So we can understand those roots, and therefore understand my triggers better. But because of those things, we developed a strategy for self to protect self. And remember, God created us to be in peace. The natural, this is so funny because it's not funny, but it's interesting. We want peace. We are constantly seeking actually the fruit of the Spirit. We always want peace, we always want love, and we always want joy. Now, these are spiritual inheritance that are freely given to us through God Himself. But when it comes to those places of self that are still trapped and enslaved to my brokenness, it's almost like I'm split into however many pieces until I bring that broken self to my present and begin to address in healthy ways. But the strategies and the coping mechanisms that we have adopted come directly from how I had to protect myself when I wasn't protected, especially if you are somebody who went through, you know, childhood trauma from somebody you trusted, somebody that was supposed to protect you and didn't. You actually grew up with a specific strategy to protect yourself. For some of us, and now I'm going to get into a little bit of the attachment styles, but for some of us, we seek connection because we didn't get it when we were, you know, younger, from our guardians or parents or whatever it is. For others of us, we avoid it because we didn't get it. So it's interesting because, you know, again, this has to do with temperament, personality. It has to do with, you know, just how I grew up, you know, and how I was taught about love, how I was taught about peace, how I was taught about relying on the people that I was supposed to rely on. All of this stuff is very vital to understand. So we have over time developed these mechanisms and perhaps strategies to keep us safe. Again, safety is it's a natural human need, and it produces the peace that we seek. Okay, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. When you're anxious, you just want to run to safety. And this is why you cry out, whether it's in anger or sadness. Let's see. Some of these coping mechanisms, as we said, are unhealthy. But I'm going to teach you some alternatives and then I'm going to wrap up, okay? Hi everyone, welcome. Any questions, feel free to ask. Even on the replay, if you're watching this later, feel free to ask any questions. Okay, so here's some remedies that are pretty accessible when it comes to anxiety, whether it's in the moment, if you're having a panic attack, Again, I've suffered from these. They're horrible. And they are crippling in the moment. Breathing. Breathing is the simplest, healthiest, and quickest way to calm yourself down. Stretching. Stretching is another one. Simple stretches can help our body and soul connection get realigned. That explains a lot of mine because I have not been doing my normal stretch routine in quite some time. Art and music therapy, again, what I teach, but art and music are two of the most powerful avenues to process and release anxiety. Music unlocks a muscle memory. So when you're feeling anxious or stressed, listening to music can calm both your soul and your body. And obviously when you add movement, it's another level of power. Okay, so that's about it. I hope this blessed y'all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you liked my class, you can find me Wednesdays on my website, and I'll be back Friday for our last day's live stream. Hope y'all are doing well. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything.